You're welcome. Nigeria Senate President Godwill Akpabio has said that the 10th National Assembly will not allow the plane crash incidents, which led to the death of Iran's president and vice president of Malawi, to befall Nigeria over a faulty presidential jet or jets. Akpabio said at this the plenary on Thursday, as he said the Senate will not hesitate to approve President Bola Tinubu's request to replace faulty aircraft in the presidential fleet if the need arises. However, he said there was no request as of now for the approval of the purchase of a presidential jet before the Senate. Don't forget that Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu, after visiting the Netherlands in Europe, could not make use of the presidential jet for a visit to Saudi Arabia and had to charter a private jet. Also, Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima, on his way to the United States to represent Nigeria on an international platform or stage, had to return back to the country because of a faulty jet. Anyway, we have joining us tonight Sheriff Adekoya, social commentator. He joins us virtually from Lagos. And of course, Zariyi Yusuf, spokesperson of the Big Tent, also joining us virtually. Gentlemen, good evening to you. Thank you for your time. All right, Sheriff, let's start with you. What are the implications of the Senate's willingness to approve a new presidential jet, in your opinion? What are the implications?
Well, good evening, and thank you for having me. It's been a wealth and welcoming scenarios across the plane. Yes, going back to the question, the willingness of the Senate to approve the jet holds about 2 or 3 different views. And the most critical of the view is the fact that the nation is going through a very pertinent, a very significant economic hardship that is obvious, that is felt across the plane. So every element of consideration will always draw inspiration, thoughts from this perspective. So the fact that there is hardship in the land will always, color the intention of the Senate to approve, the willingness of the Senate to approve the purchase of new presidential jets.
All right. We know the challenges that the jet has been facing in recent times. We talked about President Tinubu's reliance on a private jet because of the faulty presidential fleet. We know about Kashim Shettima's absence at a foreign event because of that. What should the Senate President or the Nigerian Senate do if the President sends them a request?
Well, legally, once the request is sent to the Senate, there are protocols that we do not even need to belabor about. There are established principles and protocols that guides the process. So beyond that, we always need to show a certain level of sensitivity. And that's exactly why we have extensive portfolios and aides who work around all our principles within and around the government. So Senate President, as the ROS of the Senate, I'm sure is surrounded by veterans, professionals who understand how to manage information. So it is basically a sensitive management of information at this critical point in time. So once that is done, I think if I am allowed to extend my response beyond just what do they have to do, I would like to talk about the fact that we got into a level where we need to move very swiftly away from the destination of politics to governance, patriotism, and nation building. It is difficult. We all feel the brunt. I am a Muslim. 2 weeks ago, I can tell you how much it cost me to put together Salah Festival for myself and my families. And I can tell you the coloration we saw, the landscape wasn't as smiling as expected. But be that as it may, does not in any way mean we should abandon whatever is arguably necessary. It is expedient that the presidency, as the highest ranking office in the land should have a befitting jet, not for Mr. President, President Bola Tinubu, not for the Vice President Kashim Shettima. No, basically for that office. So, the moment we then learn to manage information, manage how we react to the sensitivity of an average Nigerian, then people can then come to see, oh, okay, then this is necessary. If it is necessary, how do we go about it? How do we talk about it? Nobody needs to slam the table and say this must be done.
Okay,
no.
All right. Sheriff, so you're saying Nigerians should put patriotism before politics. It's quite interesting. I want to bring in at this point Zariyi Yusuf, who's a spokesperson for the Big Tent. Zariyi, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. Where do you stand on this?
Good evening.
Yes, this need for a presidential jet. Sheriff has talked about putting patriotism before politics. Where do you stand in all of this?
Well, to be quite honest with you, I don't know if the mention of presidential jet, as far as Nigeria is concerned, goes alongside what we would refer to as a need. It is not. To be quite honest with you, I don't really know. It's not just all about, would I say, a loss of priority or whatsoever. But I do not think when you look at the reality Nigeria is facing, the subject of a private jet, it's not, a bar of soap. It's not refueling the tank of a car. We're talking about a private jet. And so I think it's another way of demonstrating to Nigerians that primarily what is prior, what is important to them is the least concern of, this rulers, basically. I do not really see any sense of sensitivity or patriotism or love for the masses or pity for the, I would say the plague they are currently suffering. I do not see any sensitivity to that, looking at the fact that people that have been elected to represent these masses who are suffering, who can hardly find a meal per day, are basically legislating and trying to explore ways to acquire luxuries. It just doesn't really add sense. So as far as I am concerned, I think it's a government that has lost priority. It's a government that has lost focus.
Okay, but Yusuf, the government has not made any requests so far for a jet, a new jet or new jets. So if we start saying they've lost focus, will that be fair? Since the president said it's a House Committee on Presidential Fleet that has did a report,
Well, the truth is we know what Nigeria is, and we know where basically that is headed. So and I'm sorry to use the word, but I don't think at this time Nigerians are that naive to think it's something that is coming up from somewhere and we don't really know where it's coming from. Exactly, we know where it's headed, we know who the originator of it is, and we know where it's going to end if something is not, if care is not taken. So we've seen this playbook time and again, and so just because it's not a direct thing that came out doesn't necessarily mean we don't know where it's headed. I mean,
okay, so you're saying we've seen this before. It's a playbook, the same script from a playbook that is playing out. Sheriff, Yusuf used the word luxury to comment on this conversation of new aircrafts for the presidential fleet. If some new aircrafts are purchased for the president, the vice president, or the presidency, let's call it that, will that amount to a luxury or a necessity?
You see, it is conversations like these are not naturally blue or black, or rather white or black. They are definitely far from on and off. There are a very wide gulf of shades between the white and the black, meaning element of sensitivity, patriotism, concern, human, and a lot of things needs to be considered. But away from elements of sentiment, we will understand that, like I said earlier, we need to separate the fact that Mr. X, Mr. Y are the occupier of the office and come to the reality that Nigeria as a nation, we've experienced high-level mismanagement in the past. And I do not in any way mean that has come to a total stop. No. We know that it is indeed a building process. And I said earlier, I made a clear case of myself as a family man, as a Muslim. I can tell you what 2-3 weeks has been for me financially. But yet, it is critical and it is salient upon us as a nation that certain things need to be placed on the high priority list. We do not need to play any element of sensitive politics around certain key things. The only thing I will say is we need to, and if we need to, it is not a want, it is a need. And by the time we need to do that, we need to come clean. The Senate then needs to throw open, by the time they arrive at that destination, they need to throw open the process so we can see every element of integrity in that process. I think with that, some level of decorum can be restored to the narrative. How much do we need to buy? We do not need to go for the most expensive, the most luxurious of presidential jets. Nigeria as a nation, we have a lot to do. Our image has been battered over time. And how much of that can we continue to do if our president, the vice president, the Senate president begins or starts to jump from one plane to the other? I'm not saying this for their comfort, but I'm saying it because you and I are Nigerians, and we need to find a way, we need to circumvent the concerns and find a way to neutralize every element of negativity, especially as it pertains to corruption. And at the same time, find a way to build a reputable image for ourselves. Now, the security of the president, how will it sound? What credit will it give to us? Let's assume the vice president of Nigeria got kidnapped because he was on a private jet that had been compromised, or the president got this. Or are we even wishing or anticipating the fatality part or the fatal part of it? We've seen over 20, 30, 40
interesting, Sheriff. Interesting, Sheriff. I want to bring in Zariyi at this point. Zariyi, what do you say to the points he's made?
Well, I think let me begin with the last question he asked. What would happen if, the president or the vice president, the security gets, compromised in a private jet? If that so happens, it will not come to me as a surprise, because the lives of the people that have been lost either by terrorist activities or by how poor our roads are and all of that, it's not exactly as if the life of the president or the vice is far more important than theirs, as unfortunate as that example is. So it's something we don't hope for. But looking at what you would say is a priority or redeeming image, I think it's unfortunate to want to use luxurious, things like a private jet to think that would redeem our image. When you talk about redeeming our image, how have we failed as a country? And speaking about mismanagement, he made reference to the fact that it hasn't been brought to a standstill, but looking at the mismanagement that has been in the past. As far as mismanagement in this country is concerned, whatever has gone in the past, especially even Buhari's 8 years in office, is child's play compared to basically what's currently happening. What plane did the presidents before this one fly? Whoever kidnapped them? And if that's a concern, the image you would redeem as leaders, would be to give the common man a sense of belonging. That basically should be your concern. You were sent there to serve, and so the image will begin basically, I would say, with a free and fair election. It will begin with setting priorities right and all of that. It doesn't add up in a country where you find people who cannot basically eat in a day. And I think much earlier, I had an interview where I said, you just came into office and set down policies where you wiped out the middle class. So the average middle class now is basically surviving from hand, to mouth, and that's why people go around sharing grains.
So Zariyi, are you saying that the president's life, the vice president's life, if you want to, you're comparing it to those who have died from terrorist activities? Are you saying that they can die because people are dying from terrorist activities?
Well, much as I have respect for the office of the president and I understand the place of a leader, I would say that in my own growth, whether in a small group or whatsoever, I understand that the true leader basically will not create comfort for himself at the expense of the masses. That basically is the point I'm trying to make. And if it is a concern for that, the masses should be the concern of the leader over the life and the well-being of his masses should be placed even above concern for his own comfort and his own luxury. That basically is what I'm saying. So we are not actually dealing with a case of security. We are dealing with a case of luxury. That basically is what I'm talking about. That's luxury. There were presidents before him. And all of these things coming up now and saying, just look at an economy that is in a mess.
Okay, Zariyi, I want to stay on that point again before we go on a break, because I don't have much time for that. Sorry to interrupt. To give Sheriff a chance to respond to what you've said. Sheriff, Zariyi has said, okay, if you're talking about safety of the life of the president, how about those who are dying from terrorism? Indeed, Senate President Godwill Akpabio did mention that they won't allow what they feel that fate that befell the president of Iran and the vice president of Malawi, both of whom died from air mishaps, to befall Nigeria. But Zariyi said, look, people are dying from terrorism and banditry in parts of the country. Sheriff.
Well, I understand Zariyi's concern, and I really, really share largely part of his sentiments. They are valid, even though the analyses are relatively lame in the sense that it is not a person, it is the national consciousness and the image of Nigeria that is at stake here. So imagine a nation without a leader. We know that we are not where we are going. You and I know we feel the brunt every day. I know how much it costs me to fill my card. I have never worked for the government. I've never been a contractor. If you check my profile, I spent quite a sizable part of my younger age as activist from student days. So, but when it comes to being objective, there are no two ways to it. Objectivity is objectivity. Nigerian government, through the military apparatus, had agreed and made plans to take to receive 50 units of fighter jets between now and next year. 50 units. Yes, we pray that we would continue to stay on their neck and to ensure that the government keeps doing what it needs to do. And we hope that every individuals, the bourgeois within the community, within the nation, the middle-level politicians, the middle-level businessmen, will do what is necessary so that all groups can align as expected. But as we do that, there are a lot of things that cannot wait.
Okay. All right.
We can't.
All right, Sheriff and Zariyi, hold the thought. We'll come back to you in a matter of seconds. We want to take a first break, and when we return, we'll continue with the conversation. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Still the conversation on the presidential fleet, as the air fleet should Nigeria's Senate and the National Assembly approve any such request if it comes in the future from President Bola Tinubu. Don't forget that the National Assembly, particularly the House of Representatives Committee on Presidential, the Committee rather on National Security and Intelligence urged the federal government to purchase a new aircraft for the president and the vice. So these are two. What was the National Security and Intelligence Committee of the House of Representatives saying? They made a study and made some inquiries and did some research, and that committee produced a report. They had a technical subcommittee hearing on the current state of airworthiness of the presidential air fleet. You had various, stakeholders coming to, give submissions, and they had some hearings. And what they said was that some of the planes, in fact, all of them, are fragile as we speak, and some of them are in a very poor and unserviceable state. For instance, the current air fleet comprises of 6 aircraft. We look at a Boeing 737, the one we normally see around with the president. Sometimes he moves with a Gulfstream G550. We have a Gulfstream GV. We have 2 Falcon 7Xs, a Challenger CL605, and of these, we hear 3 are unserviceable. Those are the planes. What about the helicopters? Remember, at some point there was one that the former Vice President Emil Shibajo was in that came crashing down, but he survived. So you have 6 helicopters, including 2 Augusta 139s and 4 Augusta 189s, with the 2 Augusta 139s being unserviceable. So those are out. They cannot be used at any point. I guess tonight, still with us, we have Sheriff Adekoya, social commentator, Lagos, Nigeria, and of course, Zariyi Yusuf is a spokesperson for the Big Tent. Zariyi, over to you. How does the Senate stance, even the National Assembly as a whole, with the House of Reps Committee on National Security and Intelligence coming up with that report, detailed report, how does it reflect the priorities and the commitment of the National Assembly and indeed the government of Nigeria to the welfare of the Nigerian people?
Okay, let me first address something. My friend would always want to, typical of pro-government propagandists, would want to say anything that is factual, that is real, to be sentiments, born out of sentiments, which is basically a lie. Let me give you an example. When you talk about any committee meeting about security issues, one, that a terrorist organization has attacked the Nigerian Defense Academy is not part of the report. 2, that terrorists have shot down a fighter jet. It is not a part of the report. 3, that terrorists based around the most heavily fortified military installations in the country, which is the axis of Kaduna State, and they are doing evil and getting away with it, and that has not been a part of them, and that they haven't made suggestion to acquire equipment and boost the morale of the military to basically get into the forest and flush these criminals out. But basically what they are looking at is to cite an example with the unfortunate happenings in 1 or 2 countries, and then their recommendations is that you acquire a jet for the presidency or whatsoever. Now, we have a good understanding of, and my friend has been contradicting himself. Prior to the coming of this government, there was a residence that was being, there was a place where the vice president stayed. And I think when he came in, the reason why this particular structure was not finished was simply because he believed, or the APC believed, that it was going to be a waste of money. It was going to be all of this and all of that. And unfortunately, when you look at the first step that this government took from coming in is basically rolling out policies that have failed and have embarrassed the country on an international scale. First, there is a removal of subsidy, then the continuation of the payment of it. After moving the price of PMS from 160 to about 700 or to more than 900 or 1,000 in certain places, there is equally the question of huge borrowing of monies and then appropriating them for things that don't have any bearing whatsoever with the reality on ground. So Once you capture anything security, anything strategic, anything technical, and then the primary security threats facing the country are not even captured in it, that's quite unfortunate. That the Nigerian Defense Academy has been compromised, that people were attacked there and officers were taken, and it didn't call for this kind of meeting until the president needs, a private jet. So frankly speaking, there is no amount of, we're in a country where it's likely that if we needed 50 billion to solve a particular problem, and people are there either stealing money, finding ways to enrich themselves and do all kinds of things, they would rather spend 500 billion to pay people who go around basically whitewashing the government and saying all manner of things.
Let's our sheriff respond to that. You've called him a propagandist, and you've also said the National Assembly, the House of Reps Committee on National Security and Intelligence should be focusing on some other security breaches. They haven't done that, as you said. Sheriff, your response?
Yusuf, you've spoken eloquently well, only that I begin to worry that your eloquence is laden with untamed element of hatred for the government and by extension for Nigeria as a state. I have never told you on this conversation that I am pro-government or I am anti-government. The conversation has been about the positioning of Nigeria. So the fact that you said I contradicted myself is worthy of mockery. But beyond that, we will discuss objectively the issues and not the sentiments that you have brought forth. Have you forgotten, or are you not aware that Nigeria will be expected to take delivery of 24 Leonardo 346 jet fighters at the end of this year? Are you aware? And what responsibility or what portfolio do you carry that authorizes the Senate, the military council, the chief of army staff and the likes to have you in sitting when they discuss all of this? You see, it is enough of all of this hatred. We have got no other country apart from Nigeria. I am hot, I pay salaries, and I know what it means. I know where we are. I know how much it cost before now, and I know how much it costs right now. But I'm telling you objectively, I am not even a contractor. I don't even do anything in aviation. So it does not concern me in any way. But when we discuss things, when you bring a single outer of sentiment that is not objective to the table, you rubbish whatever you bring forth.
Okay, gentlemen.
How would you say, no, hold on, you really won't stop me now? I took my time to wait and listen to him all through. So it should comb the newspapers. It should comb the media space and bring out facts and read things. And I do not blame you. I do not. I think the government is not doing enough as regards the media sensitivity. What I've only said is, if we have aging aircrafts, what he has not said or what he has widely passed on is the fact that even if the president dies in a crash, it's less of concern to him.
We have to leave it at that.
Are we discussing certain policies right now? We are talking about.
We have to do that, gentlemen. It's getting heated. I wish we could continue, but I want to thank you, Sheriff Adekoya. You've said it all. You know, you started way before Zariyi joined in, so I think we've had enough time for both of you. And of course, Zariyi Yusuf, thank you, gentlemen, for your time tonight.